TV News.
I'm your host, Rachel, and this is
Heidi.
Thanks for watching.
In Las Vegas, Nevada, a mortar explosion exploded prematurely at a munitions depot and killed 7 Marines from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. It also injured 8 other service members in a live fire training exercise. Marine Corps officials said a 60mm mortar round exploded prematurely on Monday night during a training at the Hawthorne Army Depot in western Nevada. The cause is under investigation. The Marines were conducting live fire and maneuver training at the Hawthorne Army Depot, causing deaths of 7. The cause is unknown for this malfunction. The blast was among the deadliest such training accidents on U.S. soil in recent years. The Marines ordered a blanket suspension of the use of 60mm mortars pending a review after the blast. 7 Marines and a Navy sailor were wounded. Of those, 6 were in serious or very serious condition, including the sailor, while a 7th suffered minor injuries and an 8th was treated and released. This relates to civics because the protection of the people that protect us is needed and important.
In Atlanta, Georgia, 2 teenagers were arrested in the fatal shooting of a 13-month-old baby as his mother was pushing his stroller down the street in a coastal Georgia town. The baby was shot with a handgun while the mother was walking along Brunswick Street on Thursday morning. Police arrested 2 boys, ages 17 and 14, on first-degree murder charges. Police would not comment on who was the shooter. The baby's mother was shot in the leg in the attack and was treated and released from a local hospital. In an interview with Jacksonville State television station WAWS, the mother, identified as Sherry West, said that just before the shooting, the older boy told her, "I'm going to kill you if you won't give me money." West responded that she didn't have any money, and then she put her arms over her baby, and the boy shoved her out of the way and shot the baby in the head. Police are still trying to establish what the motive was for the shooting. This relates to civics because we have the right to feel safe in our community with our children.
Sir, may I please ask you a question?
Certainly.
Do you believe the U.S. should tighten up their gun laws?
I believe they should tighten up their gun laws. I heard a statistic before there that there's 3 guns for every man, woman, and child in America. I know their Constitution says there that they're allowed to bear arms, but I can't imagine that they would need a gun for their children as well as themselves. So they probably own way too many guns and probably have too many guns per capita than any other country in the world. So I think if they had stricter laws there and less guns in America, we'd probably have a lot less crime in America.
Thank you for your time.
Justin Trudeau says he can beat Stephen Harper. Just watch me, he writes on a note on an airplane. 42 years after it was uttered in very different circumstances, the Trudeau challenge is back. Just watch me, Justin Trudeau scribbled on a note on March 19th when a fellow passenger aboard the Halifax to Toronto flight asked whether or not the frontline Liberal leadership contender could defeat Prime Minister Stephen Harper. "Justin, can you really beat Harper?" Michael Kidd wrote on a note he passed to Trudeau. "Wishing you all the best." Trudeau replied in invoking Pierre, Trudeau's famous phrase during the FLQ crisis of 1970, when the militant band of Quebec separates kidnapped a British diplomat, a provincial cabinet minister. Then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau was asked by a CBC reporter how far he would go in the suspension of civil liberties during the crisis. "Well, you just watch me," he said at the time. It relates to civics because they're talking about our future Prime Minister.
On Sunday, March 17th, there was a helicopter prison escape from a prison near Montreal. The people accused of orchestrating this week's stunning jailbreak by helicopter appeared to have yet another surprise in store for them. One of the suspects isn't who he says he is. Authorities say one of the 4 people arrested gave them a fake name, and after having checked his fingerprints, they're now working on trying to find his real name. The man who identified himself as Yaj Baudouin is accused of being one of the 2 people who hijacked a helicopter and helped a pair of inmates escape last weekend near Montreal. Allegedly rented a helicopter, pointed a gun at the young pilot, and forced him to land on a tower in St. Jerome prison. From there, they tossed a rope out the window, and the 2 inmates came climbing up from the yard and toward their dreams of freedom. All 4 men were arrested within hours, and they now face nearly 24 criminal charges, including breaking out of prison, kidnapping, and pointing a gun at someone. 2 accomplices, the helicopter pilot was not injured. This relates to civics because we should all be protected by the police, and they cut the inmates from being in society for very long.
A group of 5 men who tried to pull off a sophisticated bank heist in Burling, Ontario, using heavy-duty power tools and gear nearly got away with what Halton Regional Police said was a significant amount of cash, coins, and jewels. I've done most of my career in investigations, and it's clearly one of the first I've seen like this, said Sergeant Jeff Hill. Officers arrested the 5 men in connection to the incident around 1 a.m. Monday. Police were called to TD Canada Trust, but when they arrived, they found the bank's doors were locked and nothing appeared missing. But as per regulation, they formed a perimeter and began searching with the canine unit. A short distance away, they discovered the 5 suspects hiding in a line of trees with the loot, laying down, hoping to remain unseen. This relates to civics because it affects the citizens' money and it should be protected.
Forensic reports have finally come in about last year's Elliott Lake Mall collapse. Steel supports were so rusted at the time of last year's deadly Algo Center Mall collapse in Elliott Lake that it looked as if they had spent years underwater. The corrosion problem was so bad, it's a mystery it took as long as it did to collapse. The collapse had killed 2 women and injured several others. As the judicial inquiry into the collapse has already heard, leaking occurred because an intrinsically flawed waterproofing system installed in 1980 failed from the start, prompting years of complaints. Inquiry documents show some residents dubbed the shopping center the Algo Falls. Others jokingly advised taking an umbrella with them when shopping. While the sub-strength hollow core slabs did not play a direct role in the collapse, the deficiency later thwarted proper waterproofing solutions. At the inquiry Tuesday, Commissioner Paul Belanger said he was discontinuing contempt proceedings against the mall's last owner, Bob Nazarian. Belanger said Nazarian, his wife Irene, and his son Levon now had provided 85,000 emails and access to tax records in response to a commission order. The case is due to be heard Wednesday in Divisional Court in Toronto. This relates to civics because public infrastructure should be maintained and monitored by the government. Taxpayers contribute to the funds of the infrastructure projects and should therefore have the right to go to public places without the worry of structural unsoundness.
A $300,000 commitment to the upgrade of Brockville's railway tunnel is a leap of faith the city should make. Council will vote next Tuesday on a recommendation to commit $75,000 a year to the railway tunnel reserve for 4 years starting in 2014. The motion endorsed by Council's Finance Administration and Operations Committee also places the railway tunnel on the city's 8-year capital priority list. Early estimate pegs the cost of getting the tunnel ready to turn its tourist attraction to $1.5 million. The money will go towards the repair and renovations of what is deemed Canada's oldest railway tunnel. The group's vision for the tunnel includes boxcar market at the north end, a dining car, restaurant, and trolley tours through the tunnel. also taking along King Street, Blockhouse Island, and the Rotary Park splash pad. For that, the city is expected to have a feasible study done this year. When committee members such as the advisory committee go looking for some sources of funding, these potential funders will ask if first they see the city has any skin in the game, replied Councillor Jane Furlington. The presence of dedicated community members willing to go to the legwork was a cliche for Councillor David Beattie. Mayor David Henderson, for his part, expressed hesitation, nothing that other community groups, campaigning projects already had funds raised, which was not the case here. But the mayor feels the railway tunnel project, which has been talked about for decades, has been set aside for too long. This relates to civics because it affects the people of Brockville.
Emergency lines and police resources are being tied up due to increased 911 hang-ups or cell phone pocket dials. When a 911 hang-up is received by the emergency services dispatchers, 2 officers are sent to ensure that everything is okay. Fraser said these calls are often received as a result of children playing with phones. In a pocket dial situation, Fraser said a dispatcher will try and get the caller's attention to ensure the person is okay. Officers might be sent to the location as well if the dispatcher cannot receive the person whose phone pocket dialed 911. Fraser said the high volume of pocket dials the police force receives could easily be prevented. Most cell phones come equipped with a lock function that disables the phone from accidentally making calls. This relates to civics because taxpayers are paying for police services and senseless phone calls are a waste of time and money.
Excuse me, miss, but we'd like to ask you a couple questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we'd like to know if you've ever pocket dialed anybody.
I've pocket dialed a lot of people. I've pocket dialed my mom, my dad, my boyfriend, my cousin, the cops.
And what was that like?
Well, I was in a lecture, so the cops showed up to the lecture. It was quite embarrassing.
And did the lecturer end up stopping? What did the professor do?
He just laughed. So did the rest of the class. I've since put my phone on lock.
That's a wise choice. Thank you very much.
No problem.
You just got me in trouble for that. The 17-year-old Texas man among...
Did you just say 17-year-old again?
I said... Oh, no, I did.
This relates to civics because it's the government's job to supply border security to protect us from immigrants.
He's not an immigrant.
Should they tighten up their gun laws?
Is that the question?